Hey there, and welcome to a special edition of RHEL Presents, our RHEL product update series. I'm Eric, the IT guy Hendricks, and joining me today is Mr. Rich Jerrido, the de facto leader of the Skewtang clan.
Yes, I'm Rich Jerrido. I'll cover my intro in a little bit more. I got a slide on it, but I am the team lead of the hybrid cloud subscription experience team, colloquially known as the Skewtang Clan, given our work that we do on improving the customer and partner subscription experience.
Well, today we've got a special event for you. We're going to be talking through the new subscription experience. Rich joined us on RHEL Presents just a few weeks ago to talk about it kind of at a high level, but we wanted to bring him back to get a little bit more into the details. With that said, I want to step aside. Rich, the floor is yours, sir.
Alrighty, thank you much. So yes, hello everyone. I'm Rich Jerrido. We're going to be covering a product update on your new subscription experience, and I want to thank Eric and the RHEL Presents folks for inviting us back again because last time he told me no slides, and today I'm actually allowed to use slides, which I think will be good because we'll have some good visual updates about the subscription experience throughout this entire live stream. So first and foremost, we are going to be covering certain parts of our upcoming roadmap. And I want to just be clear that the content that is set forth herein does not constitute in any way a binding or legal agreement or impose any legal obligation or duty on Red Hat. This information is provided for discussion purposes only and is subject to change for any reason or no reason at all. It's a roadmap. Roadmaps do in fact change. So I'm required to give you that disclaimer. And that being said, let's dive into all the good stuff. So first off, who am I? My name's Rich Jerrido. It rhymes with Doritos, in case you have some difficulty pronouncing it. I am the team lead of Red Hat's hybrid cloud subscription experience team. I've been at Red Hat just a smidge over 13 years. I've been in a number of different roles in Red Hat. Started off on the pre-sale side after coming over from a Red Hat customer. I then made the transition over to doing technical marketing for satellite. I then transitioned to doing product management for satellite. And then in 2018, Red Hat decided to build a unified team to handle the subscription experience. And I then transitioned over to that team as well. If you were to ask me to briefly describe in 20 words or less what I do at Red Hat, my job is to build sensible, sane, and scalable buying experiences that enable our customers and partners the ability to use and understand the usage of Red Hat software across their companies. There's a number of tools in our portfolio that we provide to do that, too many to list here. But generally speaking, if it involves subscription management, billing, buying, or other forms of usage counting, it would generally fall into the scope of our team. All right. So what does my team do as a whole, right? Like if you understand what I do, it kind of extends into what the rest of the team does. What we try to do is we try to define this from the perspective of what we allow our customers to do. So Red Hat customers can observe adoption and usage of the Red Hat portfolio, streamlined for purchasing and procurement. How much Red Hat stuff am I using? Do I need to purchase more stuff? Do I need to purchase less stuff? We want to build tools, and we do build tools to help you with that. Help you to understand whether your adoption and usage are supported by the correct subscription purchases. Red Hat has a plethora of things that we offer for sale in various different formats, things like premium versus standard subscriptions. Well, those generally have different price points, helping you to understand how many of them you're using. That is something that our team does. We build tools for that. The third thing that we do, and this is something super important, we're going to dive into this in extreme detail throughout this presentation. We want to build platform native metering options that support modern cloud-like subscription models. When most folks think of a Red Hat subscription today, they think of a prepaid subscription offering. And by and large, that has been what Red Hat has offered over the past 20 or so years that Red Hat has been in existence. However, as customers and partners want to use our technology in new ways, we want to also introduce new types of ways to purchase those softwares. Things like hourly subscriptions and post-paid subscriptions, which you'll see some of this in the very near future, such as through our Enterprise Linux extended lifecycle support offering that we've been working on with our pals who work on RHEL. The other thing, we want to make sure that folks can transact through cloud-native purchasing routes to provide access to Red Hat platforms. Very succinctly, what that means is Red Hat wants to sell its software in cloud marketplaces, and we want to make that as seamless and self-service as possible. And then lastly, we want to make sure that your workloads can be connected to Red Hat's hosted services so you can access many of the value added capabilities that we offer, things like Red Hat Insights, right? It's a component that we have that makes it easy to manage RHEL at scale that we run that you don't have to deploy a whole bunch of management tooling and technology for. My team's job is to make it easy to connect to services such as Red Hat Insights. All right, so let's go into what we've been up to. And this is kind of like a 4-year post facto look back in the past. The first thing that we've delivered, or these aren't actually in chronological order, but the first thing on this slide, one of the things we delivered is the modernized RHEL beta subscription experience, right? If you are a person who wants to use a RHEL beta, in the past, you used to have to explicitly sign up for the RHEL beta. And that always became something that people would forget to do whenever we would release a RHEL beta. Nowadays, we made that an intrinsic part of you acquiring a Red Hat subscription. It does not matter which Red Hat subscription you have, you will always have access to RHEL betas when they are released. This is super important because, next year, based on our roadmap, at some point in time, RHEL 10 is going to come out and it's going to have a beta period. There is nothing you have to do as an end user to access RHEL beta other than downloading it when it's released. The next thing that we did was we rolled out simple content access both for our hosted customers and our satellite customers and made it the default experience in both of those two platforms. In the near future, we're going to make it the only experience. But today, most of our customers have the ability to use simple content access. And many of them are, right? And that is our new subscription experience that makes it so that you don't have to attach subscriptions or reattach subscriptions or after a renewal attach subscriptions. Just use the software that you paid for with minimal complexity. Third thing we did, we built a whole bunch of metering offerings across our portfolio. And yes, that's a bit of acronym soup in that slide. But the key thing here is for various parts of our portfolio, the OpenShift part of our portfolio, the RHEL part of the portfolio, and the various things that run on top of OpenShift and RHEL, we built metered offerings so that folks who need to purchase our software in a postpaid or hourly model can do so, right? Yearly prepaid subscriptions may not always be the thing that you purchase for using Red Hat software, and now we make that possible. The fourth thing we did was we reinforced the OpenShift subscription experience. OpenShift natively Kubernetes as a technology generally transits and transacts in vCPUs. OpenShift subscriptions are sold in cores, so we work very closely with our pals and the OpenShift teams to make sure that we can provide an accurate representation of how big are your OpenShift clusters and how they change over time, because obviously that impacts how many subscriptions that you purchase. One of the most important tools we introduced in our portfolio, or reintroduced to be fair, is what we call the product discovery tool. This tool is super important, right? It's like the beginning of our new subscription experience. It's an Ansible-based tool delivered as a container that is made available to our customers so that they can go and find Red Hat technologies in their environments, right? Let's say you acquire a company, or let's say you had sysadmins who didn't have good process, and you're like, I don't know how much Red Hat stuff I got out there. Red Hat, please help me find that technology. Discovery is the tool for you, right? It can find almost the entirety of the Red Hat portfolio, and it's super lightweight. It's if you want to kind of baseline yourself and just tell me what I don't know, right? It will shine a flashlight into the dark corners of your data center. It will find the Red Hat technology and tell you how much of it that you have. It also has some additional capabilities that once it found that technology, it can report that to things like our hybrid cloud console, so we can count the usage and tell you how that compares to the subscriptions you have. But that's optional. If you want to elect not to send us that data, that is totally cool. But it's one of the most powerful tools, and it is kind of the front door of our subscription experience. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later as well. Moving on to the next side of what we've been up to. I want to talk about the RHEL portfolio. We've covered most of the RHEL portfolio in the subscription service. So if you're using RHEL or many of the things that run on top of RHEL, such as the extended lifecycle offerings or its add-ons, you can go into the subscription service and see the usage of those products. Next, we developed a couple of telemetry stacks for Red Hat Enterprise Linux to power many of the hourly products. If you haven't heard by now, 30 June is kind of like lifecycle Ragnarok on the RHEL side. RHEL 7 is going end of maintenance. RHEL 6 is leaving the extended lifecycle support period. And one of the things that we wanted to offer for our customers for RHEL 7 extended lifecycle support is the ability to purchase extended lifecycle support by the hour at various cloud providers. And in order to do that, we needed to build a telemetry stack inside of RHEL and also alongside RHEL to make it possible for us to sell extended lifecycle support or our CentOS conversion offerings by the hour. So now you have the option. You can prepay for ELS by the year. You can post-pay for ELS by the hour. You can use those on RHEL in the cloud, however you've acquired that RHEL in the cloud. All right, the last three things kind of go together, so I'm going to tie them together real quick so I don't spend too long on this slide. The activation keys, which are used for automation, tools like Image Builder and Podman Desktop use them. We moved those over to console.redhat.com. We released and updated our RHC system role. So if you're an Ansible Fluent user, you now have the ability to use a supported system role to get your systems connected to Red Hat. And then lastly, we did a whole bunch of simplification of how one gets access to gold images in the public cloud and built an automated registration experience on top of that. All right. So the next thing that we've done on the subscription experience side is we've been migrating the subscription experience from access.redhat.com over to console.redhat.com. And this slide, is intended to serve as a quick Rosetta Stone of all the capabilities that the access.redhat.com experience had that now exist over in console.redhat.com, right? Because that's where we are going to centralize the RHEL management experience going forward. It did not make sense to have a disjointed subscription experience on a different web property. So all the things that you used to be able to do in access.redhat.com have been rebuilt, reimagined, so that they work better in a world where simple content access and no longer attaching subscriptions is a real thing. And this is the Rosetta Stone that will help guide you along the way. This is also posted as part of our transitioning to the console KCS. So it is definitely persistent, right? So like, you don't have to screenshot this slide. This information is publicly available. Now, we're going to talk about some dates because dates are important. Okay, in April, what we did was for folks who were using simple content access, we now redirect those users over to using the hybrid cloud console, right? If you're using simple content access, you're no longer attaching subscriptions to systems. Most of the subscription experience in access.redhat.com doesn't really work for you because it's built around attached subscriptions. Well, if you don't attach them, then a lot of those UIs, a lot of those experiences don't make a whole lot of sense for you. So what we did in April was if you're a simple content user at our hosted portal, we're now going to redirect you over to the hybrid cloud console. Access.redhat.com is closed for business for you. Coming up later on this year, exact date TBD, but will be communicated prior to it happening. We are going to take the remaining non-simple content access users, and we're going to upgrade them so that they use simple content access in the hybrid cloud console, right? And the transition between the two from an operational perspective is relatively minor. But I would always advise the users to take a look at the documentation. The simple content access doc talks about a couple of minor things you may want to change before you adopt simple content access. Now let's kind of take a step back a little bit and kind of talk about our guiding principles, because it's going to be really important when we start talking about where we're going in the future, right? And one of the things that our team prides ourselves on is we have a code, right? Like a man must have a code. And these are kind of our 4 core principles, right? And this is something that's going to be super important because there are experiences in access.redhat.com that don't fit under these 4 core principles. First core principle is automation, right? We understand that our customers, y'all got stuff to do. And if we are asking you to do something, there is a risk that you will not do it, or you might do it wrong, or you might be mad at me like, why is Red Hat making me do this thing, right? And that's kind of where a lot of the simplification of the subscription experience starts, right? Like, why is Red Hat making me reattach subscriptions after I renewed? Like, I gave them the money. Why are they making me do work, right? So automation is one of our core principles. And with simple content access turned on, you don't have to reattach subscriptions after you renew. Yay for us. Next core principle is accuracy, right? And accuracy can be a little hard, right? But it is our job to generate the best usage report we can. Right? And that means that not only do we show the data as accurately as possible, We want to be very clear with you how we generated that data, what assumptions we made in generating that data, because ultimately the usage data that's in the subscription experience is going to be used by you in order to make buying decisions. I don't want to get those wrong. You don't want to get those wrong. So that's our second core principle. Portability, right? Portability is the super big one, right? We are firm believers in that how you pay for our technology should not dictate how you use our technology, right? If you want to switch from, paying for something by the hour to paying for something through a prepaid subscription, that's a conversation between your sales guy and your procurement guy for sure. But as an operator of Red Hat technology, my web service will just keep on working, right? So we want to make our technologies as portable as possible. And then lastly, ubiquity for everybody, right? And this means that across our portfolio, for every Red Hat product, we want to make sure that we have coverage for it, for not only our customers, but for our partners, for our embedded partners who are building solutions on top of Red Hat technology. Those are our four guiding principles. So when we take a look at like why we did something, we always vet it against these core principles because they are super important, because we don't like making people do things they don't want to do. We don't like being inaccurate. We want to make sure we get it right. It is not my job to wow you. It is my job to get it right and get out of your way. All right, so let's talk about where does our current experience, basically, what does it look like? There's really three parts to it. Step one, use our software, right? If you're a RHEL user, register a system. That's all you got to do. Enable some repos if you need those enabled repos. Tag those workloads if necessary to improve counting, right? Let's say you want to understand the difference between standard and premium. You got to tell me that, because I can't pull that in an automated fashion, right? RHEL is RHEL, whether you paid for it for premium, paid for it for standard, RHEL is RHEL. So there may be some slight tagging that you have to do, and we've made that automated as possible. And then lastly, you track your usage and your utilization over time. And we're going to go into kind of the core parts of how that intersects with RHEL. So there's three core tools in the subscription experience today that function together to deliver basically what I described on the last slide. The first one, simple content access. We've talked about it a lot, but it's super important, right? We no longer attach subscriptions to systems, period. You register a system, you enable the repositories that you need. That is it. On the far right-hand side is the subscription service, which you'll sometimes hear me and other Red Hatters refer to as Subscription Watch. Its purpose is to track the usage of software. And you don't have to install any other agents. You don't have to do any other configuration of the system. Registering a system with Subscription Manager gives me the information that I need in order to count the usage of that system over time. That's it. You don't have attached subscriptions. The only thing that you might have to do is tell me which ones are standard and which ones are premium, which ones are development use case, which ones are production. And that's what system purpose allows you to do, right? It's just basically a simple tagging system that you can run interactively through tools like Subscription Manager. It sits on activation keys, both in satellite and in console.redhat.com. And it also can be set during installation time. Trying to think where else. I think you also can set it through the Ansible system role as well. Those are the three components. Use the software, tag the software, count the software. That's it. When your renewal comes around, you no longer have to reattach subscriptions to your systems. It just keeps working when Simple Content's turned on. As long as you renewed those subscriptions, it just works, right? So the simplification is all the way through the stack, right? Register systems, use the software, tag the software, count the software. That's it. You can choose not to use certain parts of this experience, but for best effect, use them all together. They're all there. All right. So what does the subscription service look like? If I'm not attaching subscriptions, how do I keep track of the software that I'm using and making sure that I stay on the up and up? So this is the subscription service. This lives at console.redhat.com. And in this example here, which is from our lab account, it gives you the ability to see your usage of Red Hat software. And in this view, we're showing the past 30 days. We actually keep this data for 5 years. So for folks who even do renewals once every 3 years, you got enough data to see your usage over time. And what you'll notice in this chart here is you'll notice that we break out the usage based upon deployment type, right? You'll see physical and virtual and public cloud broken out differently. Part of the reason why we break out virtual different from public cloud is because a lot of times in public cloud, you can switch between paying yearly and paying hourly. So being able to see that as a unique thing makes a lot of sense. We also have hypervisor support broken out separately, right? For things like RHEL virtual data center subscriptions and other hypervisor style subscriptions. So if you notice here, we got it all munged together because this is kind of the overview. But in the top left-hand corner, you got filtering. And filtering is where the power of the system really comes into play, right? Because now you can start slicing and dicing this data in order to ask very specific questions, right? Understanding how much RHEL you're using in aggregate is super important. But you also got to answer questions like, do I need to buy more virtual data center subscriptions? Well, yeah, filter by type hypervisor. And we'll filter this chart and the systems and the usage to represent only the hypervisors, right? If you want to filter by premium, you can filter by premium. And filters are additive. So you can do, premium and hypervisor. And this replaces the process of attaching subscriptions to systems. So you just use the software, let us count it, because we're the experts at counting our own software. And we believe this is a simpler experience. Tools like Satellite that are on premise can send their inventory to the hybrid cloud console. And we do this counting for Satellite customers too. Tools like OpenShift through its telemetry stack have a very similar experience. And in the near future, we're going to also bring in the Ansible automation platform into the subscription service as well. So you got a one-stop shop that you can see your usage. You can see, what you've purchased, which is the dotted green line in this presentation, and whether or not your usage is below or above. So now when you think about it from the perspective of, hey, I'm an admin in the data center, I need to go spin up a server. Will I get yelled at if I spin up the server? Do we have capacity for it? I can answer that question in almost real time, right? This chart's updated once a day. So it's not real time, but it's close enough. All right, let me move on to the next slide. There we go. All right, so our longer term strategy, right? If you think about how we're going to go forward with this, if you look at the old system, right? The old entitlement-based system, that was kind of the experience circa 2017, right? You attach subscriptions to systems, which give you access to content. And when you renew, you have to reattach subscriptions. Open access and metering is about where we're at today, right? Where you register the systems, we do the counting, and we have metered solutions in various places where appropriate so that you can buy things by the hour, or even if you're not buying by the hour, we can actually count the usage of them. Where we're going in 2025, which is super important, is we want to really start getting into building subscription experiences that are even more purpose-built for procurement personas and for IT personas, right? Because that's what we started with Simple Content and Subscription Watch. But we need to get a little bit more specific, right? Because we have large companies who are doing big, completely complex relationships with Red Hat. And they're also just complex internally. They want to be able to answer questions like, this department inside my organization is using RHEL. How much RHEL is that department using? And we haven't necessarily been able to answer that question with the level of precision that our customers and partners want us to do. Okay, but we want to be able to do that going forward, and a lot of our technology will be built with that in mind. So let's look at what goes beyond entitlements, right? And one of the reasons why we had to move away from attaching subscriptions to systems is because that kind of blocks a lot of the new experiences that we want, right? If you want to have an experience where we are doing, metering of your RHEL usage by the hour, how does attach a subscription fall into that, right? So we want to look beyond entitlements because that's super important for our future, right? So simple content access can be looked at in two ways, right? You can look at it as, well, yeah, we removed the complexity of attaching subscriptions. That's kind of what it did. Yeah, it did that. But what it also is, it's a foundational technology for everything that comes next in the slide deck. All right. When we talk about subscription management, one of the things that I think we have to do is take a step back and redefine what subscription management is, right? Because a lot of people will say, well, I need to manage my subscriptions. Do you? Do you really? You don't actually manage subscriptions. You manage the things that the subscriptions provide. And those are usually broken into two categories. First one is access, right? You want to give people access to software services and support so they can do their jobs, right? You bought a RHEL sub because you want access to Red Hat Enterprise Linux. You want to take advantage of Red Hat support offerings for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. That's an access management problem. And then the second thing that people want to do is spend management, right? I want to make sure that the cost that I am spending for this thing, Red Hat Enterprise Linux in this example, is in line with what I expect. I'm not spending more than I expect to spend. And I want to be able to align that to my various departments or organizations or budgets inside my company. That's actually what subscription management is, right? Managing subscriptions is not a thing you actually do. You renew subscriptions, right? You purchase subscriptions, but you don't actually manage them. You manage the things they provide. So access management, spend management. So a lot of our tools going forward are going to focus in one of those two areas. And obviously, depending on who the persona is, may lean more one way or the other. So going forward, our new subscription experience has 6 core parts. The first part, as I mentioned before, discovery, right? It is the front door of our subscription experience. Many of our customers may not necessarily need to use discovery, but it is a tool that's super important, right? Because in many cases, a lot of folks don't know what they have in their data centers. And they want to be able to have an opinionated tool to be able to find it and say, hey, yeah, that's a Red Hat server. We should probably count that. So discovery is intended for that. A lot of use will be seen in this tool in disconnected environments, and that's who's probably going to be more of the primary audience. But our connected customers can use discovery as well. Like I mentioned before, a great example of discovery is I'm a company, I bought another company, and I don't know what they have. I want to find out what they have because I want to be able to add that to my Red Hat contract and maybe negotiate a larger discount with Red Hat. How do we find out how much Red Hat stuff they got? That's discovery's job. Go pull that container, go read those docs, let the good times roll. The next thing that we want to talk about in the subscription experience, and this is where most people start, is in the streamlined access world, right? If you are a fan of the RHEL Presents show and you've seen me talk on the RHEL Presents show before, you'll hear me say this before. It should take no more than one command to get you connected. And that's where the streamlined access works, right? So simple contents there. Auto registration, which works on the public cloud, allows you to link up a Red Hat cloud account to, a cloud account like an Amazon account to your Red Hat account, such that when you spin up workloads in that account, they automatically connect to Red Hat, right? So you don't even have to tell your admins to go register systems. You don't have to disseminate authentication credentials. Just at a per account level, we can do automatic registration. Okay, but that's step 2, streamline access. You pay for the software. Let's get you access to the software and get out of your way. Third part of the subscription experience, the data pipeline, right? We want to be absolutely crystal clear, referring back to our core principles about what do you get when you connect to Red Hat, okay? And we want to divide that into various levels of connectivity. Some customers are like, hey, I just want to connect, get my updates, let me roll. That is a thing we support. There's also another class of customer who's like, yeah, I want to use it all. I want to connect. I want to use analytics. I want to manage these RHEL systems using Red Hat Insights. Give me that too, right? So our job is to be clear and good stewards of your data from the point of creation to the point of submission through storage at Red Hat. The next 3 kind of go hand to hand, right? Compliance and metering, marketplace integrations, and remittance. All 3 of those kind of live together, right? And the reason why they live together is because part of our team's job is to help empower the rest of Red Hat to be able to bring their solutions to market in various different models, right? And I'm going to use the RHEL 7 ELS one because that's one I can speak about publicly. RHEL on the public cloud generally is purchased by the hour. And folks are used to purchasing RHEL through, the cloud provider marketplaces by the hour. They're like, hey, I got a bunch of RHEL 7s out there that I'm paying for by the hour. I also want to purchase extended lifecycle support for those by the hour. Well, we got to make that work, right? Because that's Red Hat software that we're selling to the end user. But we also need to make sure that we can measure that software, right? We want to make sure that we can integrate with the cloud provider marketplace like an Amazon, Azure, or a Google. And then lastly, we want to make sure that we can actually send the usage of that software that we saw to the cloud provider marketplace's API, such that you as the end customer and partner can receive the correct charge for that on your cloud provider bill. All 6 of these components together builds the entirety of our subscription experience going forward. It starts with discovery, right? Because that's our front door to the Red Hat experience. If you don't know what you got, start with discovery. moves on to simple content, flows through our data pipeline into our metering and marketplace integrations, and flows out the other side at a cloud provider marketplace. Or in the case of people who are purchasing directly, we will export you out a report from the subscription service that tells you how much of our software you're using. If there's any one slide that I will say is the most important slide in the history of mankind, or at least in the history of Red Hat, to my opinion, is this slide, right? When we talk about a Red Hat subscription, it is changing, right? When most folks think of a Red Hat subscription, they think of, okay, I pay you, up front for a 2-socket RHEL subscription for a year. Here's the money, you give me the sub, see you in a year. And for many workloads, that is a more than fine way to purchase a subscription, right? If that's the one that makes sense for your organization, do that. Thank you for your business. But at the same time, our customers and partners have been asking us for more flexible ways to purchase Red Hat software, right? And one of the ones that we see all the time is like, can I purchase Red Hat software the same way I purchase everything else in the cloud by the hour? So we've introduced offerings that are pay-as-you-go in cloud marketplaces post-paid. Again, great example here. It's Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7's ELS on top of the Amazon, Azure, and Google Clouds. They are all pay-as-you-go offerings. You still can buy a yearly ELS subscription too, whichever one makes sense for you, right? If you're like, hey, I got this RHEL 7 box, it's only going to be around for an extra 2 months beyond June 30th. Maybe the hourly pay-as-you-go subscription is the best one for you. Or if you're like, nah, I know my application teams, man, they're going to be on this thing for another, 2 years or so. The prepaid yearly subscription might be the better offer. The point is that you have choice. And then this last option on the far end, what we call committed usage. This is actually kind of the best of both worlds, right? Where it feels more like a reserved instance to a certain extent, where a user can prepay for a certain amount of capacity, either yearly, monthly, or what have you, and then burst above that as necessary. This is super important because when we talk about a Red Hat subscription, the subscription defines the experience, but it also defines the business model. And we have new business models to make it so that you can use our software in new ways you haven't been able to before. And you pick the one that makes the most amount of sense for your workload and your use case. The next most important slide, I'd probably say this is the second most important slide, is we also want to redefine how we do access management to Red Hat software and services. So I'm going to use a customer example here because this one kind of hits home really good for us. We had a large retailer in the US that came to us and they were like, hey, Red Hat, we buy all your software. We do a lot of business with you, but we got some problems. And one of our biggest problems is when we purchase software from you, it is generally made available to everyone in our account. We don't want that because if we want to bring on board a new technology, in this case, maybe OpenShift, they're like, hey, I want to bring in OpenShift technology. I want to be able to give it to a subset of people in my enterprise, let's say my enterprise architects, who can prove out that technology, build our own internal standards for how that technology should be deployed. And then once all that's done, then we roll it out to most of the enterprise at large. I can't do that with your portal. Like, it is impossible to do short of making distinct portal accounts, which are a management nightmare. So what we're working with our pals and our customer identity and access management team is we're moving towards a new access model to where instead of having this flat organization topology, we're going to introduce new concepts such as workspaces, which become access control boundaries such that our customers can model their organizations in our portal so that they can do such things as the example that I gave previously. So I can now have a workspace for those enterprise architects and give them access to that OpenShift and define what SLAs they're allowed to open up tickets with Red Hat and allow all the clusters and various services that are aligned to that enterprise architect team to be in their workspace. And no one else can use that technology. And then I can make another workspace maybe for my operations side who still is only mostly working with RHEL or maybe RHEL and Ansible and give them access to those softwares. Right. So instead of us having this world of subscriptions and entitlements and attaching things to systems and clusters, we have workspaces where you grant access to, and you give people, people and services and assets access to those workspaces. And that's super important as well, because a lot of our larger customers today got 10, 20, 30 different distinct Red Hat accounts attempting to approximate what we are building here. All right, let's talk about roadmaps and stuff, and get close towards the end and close this out. So as I mentioned before, in April, we rolled out the changes to RHSM. So if you're a simple content, user, you get redirected over to the hybrid cloud console. If you're an OpenShift user, you see improved vCPU reporting, which is super important. Q2, Q2 is always a really big time for Red Hat because that's right around the time when the RHEL release comes out. So there's some major changes coming for us. As I mentioned previously, reorg Ragnarok is 30 June. So that's when RHEL 7 goes into maintenance. That's when RHEL 6 leaves the ELS period. That's when the RHEL metered offerings for ELS will go truly live. They're currently available, but we haven't started invoicing for them as of yet. Also, RHEL 7's system role for RHC supports the system role for RHC now supports RHEL 7. Discovery, which again is our flexible scanner for Red Hat technologies, it's rolling out some simplified, more human readable reports. Q3, we're going to see some pretty cool changes as well. We are going to roll out the only SCA will be the only operating mode for RHSM. The net effect of that is later on this year, everyone who's not using SCA will be using SCA. Similarly, in satellite, the 6.16 release, which comes out later this year, will be an SCA only release. At some point in Q3, we think we're going to get the export functionality out in the subscription service, which is listed here as Swatch. We have some new changes we're going to make to how we do gold image access on the 3 major clouds. So you'll see that as well. And then also in Q3, maybe might make it into Q4, we're going to see reporting for Ansible in the subscription service as well. So if you're an Ansible automation platform user, you should be able to start seeing some of the same experiences that I showed for RHEL, and that also exists for OpenShift. You will start to see those for Ansible as well in the subscription service. I didn't talk much about auto registration, but if you're not familiar with it, it's a functionality we have on the 3 major public clouds, such that when you link up a cloud account, you have the ability to turn on automatic registration for those systems. So you don't have to ask your admins to register them. So it makes it easier to connect to services like Insights, makes it easier to connect to anything that you've purchased from Red Hat. And then looking forward to 2025, there's going to be some improvements for the subscription experience in satellite. 2 big ones that we are looking at is we're going to update the format of subscription manifests so that they work better with SCA-enabled satellites. And then also we're going to introduce a number of improvements around satellite reporting for our disconnected users, right? Because we do understand that not all satellite users will be able to leverage the subscription service. You buy satellite because you want to support disconnected users. So we want to improve that experience as well. So lastly, I do want to talk about a few resources that we have here. And I talked to Eric, so we're going to put these links in the show notes afterwards. So again, don't feel like you got to screenshot the slide. But if you want to email us, you can email my team, the Subscription Management Experience PMs. Our email address is smx@redhat.com. If you want to try out the subscription service, right? Let's say you are like, hey, I got a satellite server and I haven't sent data to the hybrid cloud console, but I still want to go use the subscription service. We actually have an Instruct Lab. You can go ahead and just click on that link, red.ht. It's a shortened URL /subscriptions lab, but that'll actually let you use the subscription service. And in fact, uses the same account that I use to generate the slide deck. So you'll see real data from, real different deployments and subscription types. And then if you want to go into the Wayback Machine, this is my 3rd time being on this show. I think 3rd, 4th time. But I did link the previous RHEL Present shows, RHEL Present 75 and 43, where I kind of go into kind of some of the theory and overview of how and why we built the subscription experience that we are currently leveraging today. So with that being said, I do want to say thank you for giving me your time. And for some of you, it's probably your lunch hour. So thank you for joining me today. I know there was a few questions that were in the chat, so I'll pass to Eric if he wants to start sending me those questions.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. I know I learned a few things, even though this is probably the third time I've seen it. So we had one main question, and if you do have questions about what Rich talked about today, please put those in chat. We'll address those now. But the one question that popped up was, can a user export data from the RHEL usage page?
So currently, no. We are currently developing the export feature. That should be out, I think Q3-ish, give or take. It's taken us a while because we're actually leveraging a new service that we haven't leveraged before. But currently, no, that's not something you can do directly in the UI. If you are, fluent enough with a little bit of automation, you definitely can pull some data out through console.api, and those are available in the developer's API catalog. So that may be a route that may be a good interim route while we wait for the export feature to get finished up.
Well, and I can say that that Red Hat Insights has some very beautiful reports, and so I'm really looking forward to when that functionality is available. There's nothing like being able to just have Insights run that report for you and then and then export it out. But yeah, as Billy and Rich said, there is an API, so it may require a little bit of scripting kung fu, but you can definitely get a hold of that information today.
Yeah, and the one thing I will say is that the APIs for the hybrid cloud console are very well documented. Like even I, a card carrying Jira Nazi, can use can use our APIs without being lost. So yeah, so that's something to be aware of.
A card-carrying member of the Gotcha. We're gonna have to document that title somewhere. We'll add it to your
Yeah.
list. So as we wrap, as usual, check out the show notes. Usually takes me about a half hour or so. Get chapter markers, extra links. But if you're catching this after the live event, definitely put your questions into the comments below, because Rich, Scott McBrien, Nate, the entire RHEL marketing team, it seems like, and myself check those comments at least on a daily basis. So if you have any questions, all is not lost. Feel free to throw that into comments. Of course, I'm stalling, hoping that a few folks have some questions to throw into chat. But Rich, any closing thoughts? Any wisdom you want to share as we wrap up?
Yeah. So I think probably the thing I will say, and I am totally going to borrow the slogan of another company because it's a really, really good slogan, but I think it's a super important one when it comes to the subscription experience. I will say, we just got a question, and I'll take that in a second. But the thing that I will say is, have you driven a RHEL lately?
Mm.
Right. I think that's super important, right? Because I think a lot of folks may have had a experience in the past that might not have been the best experience, right? And they have a view that's like it's still like that, right? And I would advise you to take a look at the new services, experiences, and everything that we have. Lots of things have changed, right? Red Hat Insights didn't exist, right? Simple content didn't exist, right? You can go and sign up for a developer subscription, get access to our software, register that system, use Insights, and it is smooth as butter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I hear folks say, well, I don't want to use Red Hat because subscription management's hard. There is no subscription management anymore. Just go use the software. We'll do the counting for you, right? So that would be my my advice going forward. Is just really just like a lot of stuff's changed. It's one of the reasons why I like coming back to the show is that, like once a year, Eric's like, hey, Rich, it's time for you to come and do the State of the Union.
Yep.
And I think it's important because, the technology does change. The experiences do change. And I mean, I remember when I first came to Red Hat, like RHEL 6 had just came out, right? And we are so many things have changed in RHEL, right? Like we got System D, we got, the web console, we got system roles. Wow, I'm mentioning all the Brian Smith stuff, right?
Yeah, well, it's a requirement. If you're going to be on our YouTube channel, you have to talk about system roles and or web console. So Brian Smith, wherever you are, rest easy. I made sure Rich covered those topics.
So yeah, so that would be my biggest, right? and probably the other things I'd probably also say, kind of walking away, like the materials from this presentation will be available and they'll be persistent, right? So we'll just look at them again if you want to reconfirm something. But the other thing I would generally say is, when you say Red Hat subscription, just realize that Red Hat subscription is changing as well, right? Like, is it isn't always necessary that you purchase a prepaid yearly subscription for our software. In many cases, you can get our stuff hourly, either through cloud provider marketplaces or otherwise. So that's another area where I would say, you know, you have that option, right? You have the option to go to a cloud provider marketplace and get RHEL by the hour, or get RHEL ELS by the hour, since since Lifecycle Ragnarok's coming. That's important. So like, get on that. And I think that's really it. And then lastly, probably I know I said that was it and then kind of cut myself off. But lastly, the biggest thing I will say is, if you are on this call, you are a Red Hat user, customer, partner, or enthusiast. There are plenty of people at Red Hat who exist who love your feedback, right? So give us your feedback, even the tough, hard, critical feedback. Yes, we are a large 24,000 person company, so sometimes turning that ship takes a while, but give us that feedback, because that's what allows us to improve, right? It was customer feedback about our old subscription experience that got us to where we're at today. So don't suffer in silence would probably be my biggest thing, beyond just processing the materials we gave you today. Just like, don't suffer in silence. Raise a ticket. Email your account team. Email my team directly. We love the feedback.
I've got to say, I've worked in the industry for over 15 years now, and I've never ever, as a customer, as a partner, or as a Red Hatter, have I ever seen a group of folks like the subscriptions experience team, and Rich, you're a big part of this, that is more passionate about fixing a problem than the affectionately called Skutang clan. And I've watched as this has changed over the last almost 5 years I've been at Red Hat, and it's amazing to see just how much time, effort, energy, and passion this team has to make it easier to run RHEL. And I assume we have other products here at Red Hat, but RHEL's my baby. So, but we do have a couple of questions here, and and just kind of speak more to that whole passion. I saw Bob Davis, who's one of our product managers. Of course, Rich hangs out in our chat a lot of times during streams. There's a few other Red Hatters here that are here to make sure that the information that they need is being presented, so we can share it with customers. So definitely a lot of love. But I mentioned Billy, and Billy has an interesting question for you, and I'll let you do with this what you will. But can I put my cast iron pan in a dishwasher?
I mean, in fairness, you should not. However, if you do, in addition to upsetting every Southern grandmother that has ever walked this planet, you also upset me. However, cast iron pans, believe it or not, even ones that have been through dishwashers, can almost always be restored, right? And I think it's a good representation of the human experience, right? Like, if cast iron can be in the worst of condition and be redeemed, generally speaking, most people can be too, right? So just, that's kind of how I look at it. Like, I haven't found too many cast iron pans I can't save, outside of ones that have been like chemically contaminated. You wouldn't want to put food on those. But like, outside of that, yeah, don't put your cast iron in the dishwasher. Try not to upset the Southern grannies. But if you do, we can restore it, and that's totally cool.
I knew whatever your answer was going to be, that it was going to be great. I'm so glad I called that question out. All right, so you mentioned we'd circle back to this question, so I was going to give you the opportunity to bypass it, but of course the question is, are there any plans on reducing the subscription price?
So generally speaking, that's kind of outside the scope of what my team does. What I would generally tell folks is, I will tell them to reach out to their account teams with regards to pricing related questions, because in many cases, Red Hat has lots of different offerings, ones that may not necessarily be publicly posted, that are intended for either certain use cases or for certain market segments or what have you. So I would generally say, like, if you're like, hey, the cost of my RHEL is too expensive for reasons, talk to a Red Hat account person. They'll be in the best position to give you a specific recommendation for your specific use case. On the development side, developer for individual subscription, that's zero cost subscription for an individual's development and small production use cases is a great place to get access to Red Hat technologies, especially for learning purposes or small scale development purposes. As far as changes to the developer subscriptions, I am unaware of any. The only change that has been recently made that's more of an experience change than a change to the program itself was the developers team specifically, not my team directly. The developers team did change the renewal process for those subscriptions. I've talked about that in the past, but in the past we used to have to force you to wait until your developer subscription expired in order to renew it, which is just not a good user experience. So we did make that change, but that was more of a structural experience change, not necessarily a change like what software is available or what software is not available or how much of that software is available.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, we were able to squeeze a few questions into one explanation there. So, if you have any follow up, feel free to reach out to your account team. Yeah, if you're unfamiliar, developer subscription for individuals, or just the Red Hat developer subscription, uh, as it's commonly known as, is amazing. I use it here in my home lab. It gives you a number of RHEL instances as well as access to some of our add-ons, the knowledge base, all sorts of Red Hat goodness for individual use cases. There is developer for teams on the account side, but for individuals, it's amazing. It's an easy way. It's a cost-free way of using and learning our software. I really wish that I knew of this program back in my days as a systems administrator. But
Yeah, I remember in 2010 when I went on my 4 month get an RHCA or die purge. I did not have a developer for individual subscription in trying to learn the Red Hat portfolio without having easy access to the technology. It was really difficult then. So it's a super powerful program, and like lots of people, lots of people have access to the developer for individuals for that reason.
awesome. And then one last question here. Red Hat merch. When? Where? Well, I'm happy to say that if you go to the Cool Stuff store, coolstuff.redhat.com, you can grab some merch. There's a rotating stock, and especially around like we're in Summit season. Summit Connects are going to start happening globally, so usually there's more merch that you can find anywhere. Actually, I didn't get this shirt, but there's Red Hat merch, there's bags, there's cable management bags, there's mugs. Of course, strangely enough, a lot of my Red Hat merch isn't right here, but there's t-shirts, there's all kinds of stuff. Yeah, head over to the Cool Stuff store to get some Red Hat merch, and occasionally there's some of our upstream community projects. I've gotten Podman shirts, I've gotten Fedora and CentOS stuff. So definitely a way to get your hands on Red Hat merch. Success Maker asks, what is a summit? Red Hat Summit is our annual conference. It usually happens in mid-May. This year, it was May 6th through the 9th-ish. But if you go to summit.redhat.com, you can learn all about our conference. Next year, it's going to be beginning of May in Orlando, Florida, here in the United States. You can get passes. You can talk to your account teams about getting that built into deals. And then a lot of the keynotes are on YouTube. Some of the sessions, I believe, are at summit.redhat.com. So definitely check that out if you're new to Red Hat. Rich, any last thoughts before I wrap us up?
I was going to say with Summit, you also get the opportunity to meet a lot of Red Hatters and talk and work with them directly. Lots of us product managers are at Summit. So one of the big things that I really love about Summit is I, as a product manager, get to have direct one-on-ones with customers, and a lot of them, right? So it's good for me because I get to learn about customer use cases. It's good for you because you get to, hear it from the horse's mouth per se. And then also, I think one of the other things about Summit that's super cool is that not only do you get to work with Red Hatters directly, you get to work with other people who are using Red Hat technology in situations and use cases similar to your own, right? So that gives you the opportunity to, find a pal who's using OpenShift or find a pal who's using AAP and be like, hey, how are you using that in your environment? And hear that directly from another Red Hat user, right? Because honestly, to tell you the truth, there's nothing like talking to another admin or developer who's doing the same thing you're doing to really help you crystallize, like, should I use this technology, the best way to use this technology, and whatnot.
All right. Sorry, Success Maker said that he was super new to Red Hat, so I was like a true activator, I just jumped all over that. Like, you need to go join, you need to go do all these things. So I'll try to
And also
temper
put your
that a little bit.
account team in a headlock and have them give you some Red Hat swag.
There you go. Yeah,
Right? Because there's some Red Hat swag that we have that isn't necessarily publicly available swag. For instance, I'm wearing my favorite Red Hat shirt that I got in Indonesia. This is like my absolute favorite. This one is not in the cool stuff store. No, I'm not giving this one up. I love this one. But yes, grab your account team and be like, hey, my man, like give me some of that good, the real good, the secret stuff that y'all don't share with people normally.
for sure. All right. So that brings us to almost to the top of the hour. Rich, thank you so much for your presentation and for the banter and the Q&A. Really appreciate your time. Also, if that way, if if you're interested in joining the conversation, we have a Discord server. It's grown by leaps and bounds over the past month. So there's a growing group of people. Not a lot of Red Hat specific conversation, just kind of home lab, some gaming discussion, a little bit of everything. But like Rich said, just a chance to meet other technologists, other people that are in your shoes, or maybe have shoes that you're interested in getting into. So definitely join our Discord, but also make sure to subscribe to this channel. If you liked Rich's presentation, please give it a thumbs up. That helps drive additional content. In fact, Rich's RHEL Presents episodes are always a big hit. So he twisted my arm a little bit, and I said, okay, we've got this product update series, and you are allowed to use slide decks. So
Thank you. Thank you for letting me use slides. Hopefully it wasn't too boring.
No, I enjoyed it. And like I said, I've heard the presentation a couple of times already.
Yeah. So since they won't give me a subscription presentation at Summit, we'll just do it here.
There you go. So upcoming events, if you've stayed this long, clearly you're a fan. So upcoming events this Friday, Scott McBrien, or tomorrow actually at the time of recording, Scott McBrien will be taking you through bash scripting, automating tasks on RHEL on our Into the Terminal series. Next week, Scott and Brian Smith will actually be hosting RHEL Presents. I'm taking some unexpected time off next week, so Scott readily jumped in, and Scott and Brian will be talking about the RHEL lifecycle. So EUS, ELS, major releases, minor releases, all the things, and we'll have some live demos next week as well. Let's see, coming up, we've got an episode of RHEL Presents featuring Yubico. So if you're a big fan of the YubiKey with RHEL 9.4 and our partnership with Yubico, you can actually join. You can actually use your YubiKey to log into your RHEL servers. And I know that they're working on some of our other products as well. So if you're a big YubiKey fan, don't miss out on that episode. The Fedora podcast is back. We're talking about the Fedora Docs team. I've kicked off. I've rebranded and relaunched my own podcast. It's the IT Guy Show. That's available on my channel. So, Rich, anywhere you'd like to send folks?
Whew, okay. Honestly, I'd probably say head over to the customer portal, check out the transitioning from RHSM to the Red Hat Hybrid Cloud Console document. That covers a whole bunch of stuff, and that'll fan you out everywhere you need to go. And then, like we said, in the show notes, we'll link to the previous RHEL Present shows. Those are good if you want to kind of understand a little bit more of the history. I think the big thing here that I tried to represent, and it's kind of hard, right? We have probably 9 or 10 distinct engineering teams that build components of the Red Hat subscription experience. So, I wanted to make sure that I kind of covered the enormity or the entirety of the work without being overly verbose in any one section. So there are some things that, I did kind of gloss over. So if you want to really get deep into, discovery because you're a disconnected customer, go find the discovery docs and, dive in. And if you want to learn more about simple content and how it works more technically, I just go look at the docs. All the stuff's super well documented. So that would be my recommendation. Start with the transitioning doc. Look in the show notes after this, after we get it all updated and stuff, and then go from there. And then lastly, as always, if you have any questions that we didn't answer, leverage your account team, leverage our support, and email my product management team. Like we do not shy away from talking to customers directly. So again, smx@redhat.com is my product management team, and we'll handle any questions that you may have about the subscription experience.
Awesome. All right. On behalf of my guest today, Rich Jerrido, and the entire Red Hat Enterprise Linux and subscription management teams, I really want to thank you for your time and joining us for this webinar. So until tomorrow, we wish you well, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks for having me.